Media affects all of our lives, and to be able to share with you about how it's affected mine is an honor. I would have never guessed that I would have been a minister growing up. I was raised in Harlem, the land where hip-hop was created, all right? So, I mean, whether it was Run DMC or not, that wasn't really my generation. I didn't really care that they were ministers. That was not part of my plan. Even though Nas's nickname is God's son, that still wasn't really part of my, wasn't what computing in my own mind, even though that's what I was raised with. But it was the soundtrack of my life. And it definitely was what influenced me, and I think what influences a lot of us, whether it's Kendrick now or Drake, it definitely was what pushed me. But I think what I get from all this, and I think what my life shows, is that media bleeds into reality. It does. It affects you. It comes in and it influences your life. It's how influence works. It influences how you end up working. And research has shown that when it comes to people and influences, we can only handle about 150 voices or 150 channels, 150 relationships. After that, it gets too much, and you would agree with that. Just listening to your two siblings is too much sometimes, right? Or both parents talking at the same time. You can't handle all that noise, and yet we've got so many voices that we listen to, whether they be social or social network. And so I think the Bible is clear on that, even though we understand that in a normal way. The Bible gives us some light or sheds some light on that. In Proverbs 18, verse 24, it says, "A man of too many friends comes to ruin." Right? It's just when there's too many voices, you're pulled and you're pushed and you're pulled and you're pushed, and none of us are Mr. Fantastic. All right? We don't work that way. Okay? We can't be pulled that much. We can't do it. And so I think for me, feeling that pull, feeling that push, hearing those words, listening to those lyrics, and being raised in an environment that I was raised in, my block was called the War Zone on 152nd in Harlem. And so I was definitely pushed and pulled in many directions. Lust was probably the biggest one. And when I see the music videos or where I hear the lyrics, it's all about getting mine. All right, being up all night to get lucky. I mean, it was all about that. And I remember being young and social media being actually a pretty good outlet or venue or channel into sexuality, where one night I get a text message from a girl who I hadn't talked to in forever in high school, wasn't really friends with her, and she said, "Hey, a friend of mine saw your picture on Facebook and she thinks you're cute." And that's the kind of thing where you're like, "Oh yeah? Who are you again? I don't remember you." But I was like, "Nah, I don't want to care about that." And so I was like, "Whatever." And she said, "Well, here's her name in case you want to hit her up." And I was like, "Nah, I don't care." But then what goes through your mind? You're like, "Well, I want to see what she looks like, just in case, validate myself." So I go on Facebook, and I see what she looks like, and I think she looks good, and so I was like, I'll just friend request her. Right? That wouldn't do anything. Maybe I can see the rest of her pictures of what she looks like. None of us have ever done that. None of us have ever heard her name and gone and checked on Facebook. No, of course, far be it from you. But so I did that, and and 2 minutes after I friend requested her, she had accepted me and sent me a message. And very quickly, that led to a phone conversation that carried on for 4 hours. And 3 days later, I lost my virginity to her. It was very difficult to bounce back from and to detach your mind from that kind of an imprint. But that was how lust kind of came into my own life. I also felt myself becoming a liar. And lying can be so easy, right? Like, it's just so simple. And what I started doing, in lies, it wasn't even to make myself look good. Have you ever been in a situation where you're talking to somebody and the conversation is going a certain way and you just find yourself saying what you think they want to hear? It may not even make you look good in the moment. I remember saying so many lies that made me look like an idiot, but it made the person laugh and so on and so forth. I found myself lunging. The hip-hop world, at least the one that I was a part of, was one where you saw people and the people you looked up to lunging across a table to punch someone who disrespected them. I remember being at a club one night, which by far is so overrated. But anyways, I remember being at a club. Well, it's just a bunch of guys sitting, with their backs on the wall, looking at other girls, all insecure to ask them to dance. But anyways, so I remember being at a club and coming out, and anyways, a lot of things led to a lot of things, but I remember my jaw being pulled out of its hinge in a fight that I was in. I've been in fights where I've done the abuse or the beating up, and one thing is for sure, and anyone who's ever been in a fight or in a number of fights will tell you this: whether you win or lose, there may be a satisfaction of winning, but you don't feel any different. Because you know what it feels like to go back home looking a mess, and you don't like the other person feeling that way either. It was an empty life that I was a part of and dealing in. But you know what? I think the thing that helped me and helped me get through all that is I realized something that's going to sound like an insult. It really will, but it's not. It's super good news. Nobody cares. No, seriously, nobody cares. Like, when you go home, all right, when your classmates go home, none of them are talking about the shirt you wore. But yet we work so hard, whether it be in person or in the social network, to present ourselves in a certain way, but nobody cares. And when I realized that all this work was for naught, it freed me from caring so much what people thought. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to lust and hide. I could just be myself. I could free myself from that type of a burden. It's really the answer to the problem. And the Bible tells us this in Proverbs chapter 3. It says, let Twitter be bound around your neck. No, not Twitter. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on your iPad. No, write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and men. When you put God first, when you please God, you inevitably please men. And this all came to fruition. I want to show you a picture of my wife. She is pretty awesome, and her name is Elena. And we just got married 3 months ago, so I'm very new to this, and I'm loving every second of it. But 6 months ago, when I was on my way to purchase the engagement ring, I had the money in my pocket, I was on my way, I was in New York, and I was at a stoplight, waiting for the light to turn red for me to cross, and I looked to my left, and I see this girl who looked very familiar, but I didn't really recognize where she was from, so I looked away, and then I looked again, and it was the girl that I had lost my virginity to. I had not seen her in many, many years. And at that moment, everything came back together. Everything I had learned, everything that I had been raised in, whether it was my influences of media, hip-hop, or friends that were not good company, and everything I had learned about God and what I wanted. And there was so much turmoil in just seconds. You know what I did? As I looked at her and she looked up at me, I ran. I was out. I escaped. I got out of there. I opted out of living for the viewership or normality of the many, and I chose to live for the viewership of one. And God saw it fit that I be blessed with the one. Listen, media may bleed into reality, but you and I, we can choose to stop the bleeding.